Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ariana, but you can call me Ari, and today we have a special guest. Milo. Milo's here. My sweet boy. He has decided to make an appearance. I told you this couch, he likes to sit on the couch. And so here he is today in all his glory. We'll see how long he will grace us with his presence. But today is the end of January. Today is the last day of January. By the time you're watching this video, it will be January 31st. And am I the only one who feels like January is, I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one who feels like January is the longest month of the year. It historically has been also like the roughest month of the year. And however, this January personally has been tolerable, and like I've been finding ways to move through it through the month of January with more grace. And that's a testament to two things. One thing being books. We love the books, and that's been helpful. And two, it's yoga. I've done, by the time you'll see this video, I would have done 31 days of hot yoga in a row. And oh, there he goes. He's watching cat TV. He's really entranced in the cat TV that's on right now. But before we go any further, if you could take just a moment to like this video, because not only does it make my heart so very happy, but it also tells the algorithm that I'm doing something right and will continue to recommend me to more like-minded people as yourself. So with those two things in mind, yoga and reading, it's really just been about, for me, trying to find and maintain grace and patience and balance throughout the chaos. And that looks like slowing down, actually, not actually doing more and trying to be everywhere and do everything, but actually just taking things away and focusing more specifically on certain things. And so we're going to get into the 5 books that helped me find some sense of peace, some sense of balance, and also help me gain some knowledge along the way. And the first book we're going to talk about is The Snow Child by Eowyn Ivey. Eowyn Ivey, I believe that's how you say it. This is a wintry, meditative, restorative, reflective, hopeful, a little sad book about a couple living in 1920s Alaska. They are an older couple that had always had the desire to have a child of their own, but they've been unable to. Having a child was like your peak. It was an example of you having made it in life and you had offspring to show for. And so this couple couldn't, and it kind of created this sense of strain and stress and between them. One snowy, wintry day in Alaska, they decide to create a snow child, and they dress her up, made out of snow, make her look all cute and pretty. And then sometime later, they start to realize and notice footprints, and that there is a small snow child around them, living amongst the woods. And then it becomes a story of how they interact with this snow child, interact with this sudden appearance of this whimsical being. Yeah, that's pretty much the story. It is based off of a Russian folk tale called The Snow Child. And so if you are familiar with that lore, this is pretty much what this book encompasses. And it will ask you to slow down and just kind of be with the story. So I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a great meditative read for the winter season. Okay, the next one we're going to talk about is one that I already discussed in a previous video. I made a whole video about it, and that is The Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man by James Weldon Johnson. So this is a book that takes place at the turn of the 20th century, post Reconstruction era. And we follow a narrator who is unnamed, and this is a story about how he is a biracial man who decides to live his life as a white man by the end of the book. And it is advertised as an autobiography, but it's actually a fictitious story about his life. And so this book to me really exists as an artifact. Like, I don't really feel the need or desire or want to really rate this book because it feels like a piece of like time capsule history, you know? And it's just, it's the way he talks about Black people, the way he internalizes his own racial hatred, his own self-hatred, then reflecting it out on his own people is just sometimes so frustrating and deplorable to read. And it's also just a very morally complex story. And if you're interested in like nuance and understanding that side of history and like that real kind of conflict between self-identity and survival, I think you'll be interested in this book. And if you have read it, or if you haven't, you can always check out my previous video of where I talk about this book for about 13 minutes. And I plan to do that with every classic book. I have a goal to read 12 Black classics this year, and I didn't realize I had picked 12, perfectly picked 12, one for each month, duh. So every month I will review one of the classics that I'm currently reading and talk about it with you. So this was the one for January, and yeah, this was interesting, a very interesting piece of history, and during a very complex, racially charged time. And if you love moral ambiguity and nuance, this book is going to be for you. The next one is one we're going to talk more about in February on its own. It's going to stand on its own because it has to. This is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. We have Janie, who is a Black woman who is searching for love. Then she finds love and then becomes love herself. I appreciate this book's existence, and I'm happy she wrote about Black love during a time of so much stress, strife, and struggle, because it's important to have perspective, I think, in realizing that there's so much nuance and color to Black life that it can't just be put into a box of one thing. And while so much is happening, joy exists, love exists, beauty exists, complexity in relationships exists, and hearing it from the perspective of, first of all, I'll give this book its own video, so I don't want to go too far into it, but like, I think she does a great job in offering perspective in the sense of like what it would be like to have your own voice or to not have your own voice as a Black woman during this time. And a lot of the story is told through, at least a lot of the beginning half part of this story is told through the eyes of the men that she interacts with, or the men and their opinions and their perspective of women. And so she just does a really great job of providing perspective. And I'm so glad that I finally have joined the club of everyone who's read it, and now I can talk about it with all of you, and I can't wait to have a whole other video about it coming up real soon. So the next one is one that we have talked about before on this channel, but I hadn't finished it yet, and that is Positive Obsession: The Life and Times of Octavia Butler by Susanna M. Morris. I talked about this book in my nonfiction books I think you should read in 2026, and I still feel this way after having read this book. If you're not familiar, this is a biography of the life and works of Octavia Butler, and Morris does a really good job of pulling different themes and characters and talking very specifically about those themes and characters as it relates to the life of Octavia Butler. So much of Butler's life had been influenced, or so much of her work rather had been influenced by her life. Just read Octavia Butler. I don't know what else to say. I think that you can start in many places. I wouldn't really recommend starting with this biography because Morris does go into some specific themes of her work, but I suggest reading maybe her short stories, maybe reading Kindred. Just know that if you are looking for something that's more science fiction, Kindred would not, as Octavia Butler had described her own book, is not considered what she would consider a science fiction book. It is a book that features time travel, but she herself does not categorize this book as science fiction. And something that's also interesting about her life is knowing that it's ironic to know that it was hard enough, it was hard to break into the scene and find her voice in science fiction as a Black woman. But then on the other end of the spectrum, as she did find her voice and did get recognition, she was also pigeonholed into that title. And there were other works and other things that she was interested in, but people saw her as a science fiction writer. So, you know, she had, oh gosh, I was supposed to look it up before I got on this to make this video, but she wrote towards the end of her life, she was writing a book about vampires and she hadn't finished it yet. And yes, Fledgling. I believe it's Fledgling. And she had intended to make it a series, but unfortunately she had passed before that time due to a fall. I believe she had a stroke and she had fallen. And so, and that was in her 50s, I believe early 50s. And again, it's another example. I talked about this in my nonfictions video of an artist, a creator, a writer, whatever, you know, a prolific person, so gone so soon, so young, like Lorraine Hansberry, who died at 34 of pancreatic cancer. It's just sad to think about all the things that we didn't get, but there's so much that she did in that time that is so impactful. So I highly recommend reading Octavia Butler for sure. Wherever you start, doesn't matter, just start, you know? And the last book I want to talk about is one that I have not mentioned on my channel yet, and that is What You Leave Behind by Wanda M. Morris. This is a book about a woman named Dina Woods who goes back to her hometown in Georgia. I think it's Brunswick, Georgia. And after having, you know, grief, the loss of her mother, lost her job and her relationship, she's just going kind of back home to regroup and recalibrate. And in the process of doing that, she comes across she likes to go for drives and takes walks, and she takes a walk on this man's property. This Black man who thinks that she is someone there to try to sell her property and his property, and he is very adamant about her getting off that property and that he won't sell. And so not too long later, she goes back to that property and realizes the man is missing now and his property has been sold. And so she gets in this whole whirlwind of what happened to this man, what happened to his property, and it becomes this thriller to find out the very shady business that is property law. It's about not erasing the lives and the history of Black people and taking away from them what generations upon generations before have worked so hard to maintain. And it reminds me of the themes that I saw and read in Happy Land. It takes place in a different time, but it still has that same kind of idea. There is also an element to this that I was not a fan of. And there's this like romance element to this book, and I was like, it was a little corny to me. The dialogue between like the MC and her like old, like it was a romantic interest from her past that like comes back and tries to help her figure everything out. And I'm cool with him helping her out, but like when it got to like them flirting and him trying to like it was just a little corny to me. And so it was an element of the story that I didn't need in order to feel like it was impactful. But what I did love was the relationship between the main character, her father, and her uncle. She had a really great connection with them. They were really there to help her out. And it was just really about family, community. I thought it was a very interesting read. It moved very fast. I do recommend it. The romance part wasn't for me. Okay, wasn't for me. So those are all, I think. Oh wait, there's one more. There's one more book that I really need to mention really quickly before I go. I'm not finished reading it, but I just want to call it out because this is an interesting one. Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. This is a book that explores what would happen if all of the white people in the nation just ceased to exist. And I am more than 50% of the way done with this book, but man, is it an interesting concept. What I love so far is that the author isn't trying to answer every question about what life like this could be, what life without suddenly the life. He's not trying to answer every question about what life without white people would be like, but he's also doing it in a way that I feel like is honest to type of writer he is. And I don't know this writer and his work besides this, but I'm saying I could tell, I could hear his voice. Like I could get a clear sense of his direction. I love literature that seeks to move you and seeks to make you feel something. So that's, it's compelling. I can understand there are people looking at my watch because I got to go to work, but I can understand that there are some people who don't like the daughter in this book. They find her annoying. And maybe my flaw is that I'm too understanding, not just in books, but in relationships. I give a lot of grace, maybe where there shouldn't be, but I'm going to say it, I can kind of understand why the daughter is the way she is. After having read the Autobiography of an Ex-Colored Man as well, it does help me to see like it is complex, and whatever she's experienced before this event, before all the white people in the world disappeared, there's something, it's her experience and she's still working through things. As I'm reading this book, she's still struggling with how life is now. And I'm not saying a lot. You're probably, if you've never read this book, you're probably like, Ariana, what do you, I will return to this when I finish and I will give it a proper review, but I do just want to call it out because it's been a book that I have been unable to put down regardless of how I feel about the daughter or whatever. It is still an interesting concept that may make some uncomfortable, but it should. So yeah, and I love the cover. It's in your face. So those are all, yes, okay, those are all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 books that I have read in the month of January. It hasn't been the worst. It hasn't been the best, but we're making it happen. We're going into this year, the rest of this year, with patience, with grace, and with a lot of self-love. So thank you all so very much for your continued kindness and support, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye!